In spite of several measures where we have been trying to reduce the unemployment factor, now the lower labor productivity also implies that the lower rate of economic growth, which is the main cause for poverty and inequality. Without the income levels increasing, you will not be able to match the cost of living standard. Good morning and welcome to the first session, Chapter 1, Unit 1, first semester BBA in Pre-Reforms of Indian Economy, where we are going to talk about poverty and unemployment. Now, this is a subject which has been spoken very widely in the Indian subcontinent. Probably our country might be known for the number of people who live under the poverty line, that is the below poverty line that I'm talking about, and the major problem called as unemployment. Due to the rising population in India and due to the environmental factors which has been leading to a great demand in terms of cost of living and a very less supply when it comes to the jobs orientation, there's always been a crunch. There's always been a barricade, a challenge in terms of getting each and every Indian the most desired job he or she wants it. Now let's get on to the reality here. In spite of several measures where we have been trying to reduce the unemployment factor, this problem has never come to a conclusion. Reason being is that it is not that we are short of skills or short of graduates. The problem is that we are not able to create enough opportunities that is required. One side, when we talk about India as a growing nation, a developed nation, probably the emerging economy in Asia, but the other side we need to understand, are we ready to create enough employment for a 1.3 billion plus population? Now, this is a very big challenge, and we see that every time we have to do some or the other creation, some or the other production enhancement so that we are able to accommodate job. After 2020, the post-pandemic we are talking about, we started thinking about entrepreneurship as one of the most successful path of creating jobs. But as you gradually see, even the entrepreneurship has a challenge in terms of creating jobs. Why? Because if there is not enough demand for the service or product that we are talking about, then we might not be able to generate sufficient employment. Now, one of the reasons that we have been talking about here is that one side there is a word called as poverty, the other side we're talking about unemployment. Both are very closely interlinked, followed by the tax structure, the revenue, and the rising cost factor that we have been talking about. Now, one is closely interlinked to the other one. We cannot deny this factor that without A, B exists. Definitely A, B, C, D, all of them are in a simple straight line equation. So one, we start solving poverty. In order to solve that poverty, we need employment. So if we are able to generate employment to the maximum level possible, automatically you will be able to solve the poverty issue. And if you are able to solve the poverty issue, the standard of living will also go up. And if the standard of living goes up, our rank in the Human Development Index will also go up. So these are all linked like a chain. Moving further, let's try to understand the main reason for low level of income among the majority of Indian people is unemployment and underemployment. Two different factors that we have to learn. When I say unemployment, that means to say that I don't have a job. And when I say underemployment, that means my capabilities are not completely utilized. I'm being still put under a question mark. I'm being still put under a barricade, not trying to expose myself, not trying to come out with the best of the opportunities given. So that's exactly where you see that it leads to a low productivity in terms of labor. Now, the lower labor productivity also implies that the lower rate of economic growth, which is the main cause for poverty and inequality. So when you start understanding the lower productivity, many people think that that's not going to really affect. Why? Because there are other sectors which will compensate for this factor. But the ground reality is that you cannot take A and replace it over B. Every sector has to contribute to its best level, and then only we will be able to see that the overall economic growth is at its best. So when we talk about the low labor productivity issue in certain sectors, that will directly reflect upon the economic growth. So what we are trying to understand and what we are trying to rephrase ourselves is that the main cause of poverty is not just going to be the low labor factor, but consequences also about the factor that how we are going to push employment into these sectors. Many people today feel that the employment is good in the services side only. The manufacturing sector is not able to create that demand. The manufacturing sector is not able to create that excitement altogether. So many people would always think that let's leave agriculture, let's leave manufacturing and shift our focus into the service sector. So what happens? One sector, one part will continuously grow and deliver revenue. The other two sectors will fail invariably. And that's one of the biggest problems that we are talking about today in our Indian economy. Followed by, since sufficient employment could not be created through the process of planned economic development, it was not possible for us to raise the income levels. Now, this is a very, very crucial factor to be talked about. Why? Because one side, when we talk about unemployment, poverty, and other factors, the other side, we also need to understand the issue. The understanding here is that we are not able to increase the income levels. What is happening with the income levels? Why is that income level falling down so badly? So we need to start thinking about it. We need to start understanding that without the income levels increasing, you will not be able to match the cost of living standard. So everywhere there is a disparity, there is an inequality that's going on. So what is the solution for this? The solution is that we cannot control inflation just by taming down the prices. What we need to do is that as to keep on par with the inflation, the standard of living also has to be raised and the income flow has also to be increased. Then only probably we can be able to match ourselves and see that the inequality level starts coming down. Followed by the inflation. It's a very, very common topic today. I think probably every one of us know what inflation is all about and how it has been, going forward. It's becoming a stock for everybody. Probably many of us do not really know the meaning of inflation. All we know that it's all about rising prices. But let me just clarify you in terms of the inflation. During the inflation, few profit earners gain and most wage earners lose. A very important statement for all of us to understand. Now, when you're talking about large business houses which are concentrated on exports, due to the rising price of dollar and the rising cost standard altogether, certain business houses will definitely make huge profit because of the export. But because of the inflation, the common man is definitely affected. The common man is not in a luxury position where he can afford to go forward and match the standards as prescribed. So what happens here is that the common man becomes a loser altogether. The common man comes back and says that I'm not able to live up to the standards that has been given. I'm not able to live with the meager income. He's not able to meet the ends. So automatically what happens here is that the wage earner becomes the loser. Now, if you look here, most of the wages have always lagged behind the prices and profits have increased. So the person who's supposed to be known as the employer, the owner of the business, has always been making profits. But the people who are working for this employer remained poor forever. And that's a very big sad part of the story, where we are not able to make people understand, rather the government understand how we could improvise on this situation. Now this has created more and more inequality. I think most of us would know few names like Ambani, Adani, who have been consistently making profits in the Indian environment given standards. But not everybody is Ambani and Adani. There are hundreds and thousands and millions of people on this earth, especially in India, who are still wage earners. What about their lifestyle? Why is that they are not able to live a normal life? What happens to their income during the special cases or during an economic crunch like this? That's exactly what we need to concentrate and we need to bring a reform about. Moreover, during inflation, money income increases, no doubt, but the real income falls, which means you're not actually making money, it's only on the paper. Followed by, this also leads to a standard of living for the poor people, since their purchasing power comes down. Now, the most interesting part, or rather the most difficult part of the story that we need to understand, is that when a person does not have the capacity to satisfy his needs, does not have the power to purchase what he wants for his family, that really puts him on a very low scale altogether. That really puts him onto a back seat. Now, that's exactly what is happening with people in India, especially with the poor people, because they are not able to take forward their lifestyles to a better way. They are able to see that though there is some meager income coming, that income is not sufficient for them to buy the goods and the services as what they want. Now, the tax evasion, that's the next factor that we have been speaking about in our Indian scenario. What is this tax evasion all about? Tax evasion is something where the personal income tax rates are very high, and high tax rate encourage evasion and avoidance and give birth to a parallel economy, or what we call it as the black market or the black money altogether. Now, what happens in India is that as you keep on increasing the tax rate, or you put various forms of taxation, people might think that that is a direct revenue source to the government. No doubts about it. But how many of us actually pay the income tax? In India, if you start seeing that, hardly only about 20 to 30% of the population pay income tax, which means about 70% of the population does not pay income tax for various reasons. Which means to say that over a period of time, officially or unofficially, let's take the statistics and try to understand this. This 70% of the people will have a separate economy altogether. They would be running a system by themselves. They would be avoiding paying of taxes, by which the government will fall short of revenue, the government will not have enough money, and there would be a black market automatically created. Now, this is not desirable at all. Now, let's go here and try to understand, where are we talking about the unofficial economy factor? If you look into this unofficial economy, though it is not as stronger as the regular economy, because you will not be able to show it outside, but nevertheless, it is not on the weaker side. This economy has been doing a lot of damage to the system. Why? Because this also leads into corruption, money hoarding, and host lot of problems, by which again we are going back to the square one of talking about poverty and unemployment, followed by the inequality in terms of income and wealth is also being propagated by the high tax returns. This is one of the important things that we need to understand. This is because the person who has got higher income might be in a position to pay income tax, but you can't apply that rule to a person who's on the lower rung of the strata. Now, for him, what happens is that taxation becomes too much and he's not able to pay that money, so automatically this becomes a very big problem altogether. Followed by the regressive tax factor. Now, what is a regressive tax? The indirect taxes give maximum revenue to the government, but they are regressive in nature. What do you mean by that word, regressive in nature? That means they are not correlated. They are again and again creating more and more burden to the society. Because of this regression, what has happened is that they've also created more inequality over the years, because it is always coming as a burden to the poor people. The rich people are not being really taxed because they can afford paying that. But for the poor person, he is being taxed multiple times, where he is not able to get his work done, he is not able to realize his income, and finally, he is in a very bad position altogether. And that is why we say that the government burden is becoming very, very high. Followed by, how are we going to reduce the inequality? We are going to give payment of bonus, which is very, very important. Why? Because the bonus, which comes as a cash factor altogether, will be of a very, very great help to the people. They will be able to see that, and it should be made as a compulsory in each and every industry. Followed by ceiling on land holding. We should not allow people to just keep on accumulating land. There needs to be a level. There needs to be a standard set by the government very, very clearly, that beyond which nobody should be able to acquire land, so that everybody gets a chance to acquire a piece of land, at least for their safety, for their future, and they are able to generate some sort of shelter for their family. And next thing is the self-employment projects, where I would strongly recommend that people should look into entrepreneurship as an avenue for growth, because this would give both the urban area as well as the rural area a chance to understand the economic growth. Nowadays, what is happening is that people are getting a chance, but people don't realize what is the potential to grow. So this is the right time for us to understand the potential and take it forward. Transfer payments, which is also very, very important, such as unemployment, compensations, pensions. These things have to reach on time to the people, so that they are able to gain confidence, they are able to generate with that money and take it forward. And this is much for the welfare for the weaker sections of the society. Why? Because many families still depend on the pension, still they depend on the compensation that is given by the government, and they do wait for all kind of benefits and the kind of extra benefits which have been given by the government. Now, for example, let's say that you get a scholarship to study. That scholarship amount is a very big amount for a very poor family in India, because through that they would be able to make their children study. So the needy dispersal of this, timely dispersal of this amount will definitely help to reduce the inequality factor. With this, I come to the end of today's session, and going forward, we would be talking about the new factors in terms of the agricultural policy in India. I hope and believe that all the factors that have been told here in terms of the theory would also be important for you from the exam standpoint, as well as in the practical walk of life. So in the upcoming sessions, again, we are going to concentrate about a lot on the agriculture, the land reforms, and the other factors that are determining the economy of India. But until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me today on this wonderful session.